Fish Stripes Unfiltered, episode 36. It's gonna be a good week of baseball. Baseball's almost back. We have WBC this weekend with the start of Venezuela versus the DR, and we have a very special guest here today. But before that, Isaac, what's up? We're gonna be up in Jupiter this weekend. We're gonna have a good time, and we have Eli also with us here today, who's gonna be up there. So, next couple of days are gonna be pretty good in terms of coverage and all that stuff. How are we?
Yeah, the next couple of weeks at least will be full of coverage from my end anyway. I'll be there the next couple of days with some family. I'll be there during the weekend with some family. I'll be doing some coverage as early as next week as well. So I'll be spending at least the next 10 days up near Roger Dean.
Yeah, yep. And as you alluded to, I'm making my annual trip in for spring training all the way down on Thursday. I'll be around all that weekend and mostly in Jupiter, but seeing some WBC on Sunday. If anybody of our listeners are around a ballpark at all over those next few days, it'll be easy to find me down there as well as our entire group as well. So I look forward to seeing as many people as possible, obviously as many players as possible and other team personnel to really make my trip worthwhile. But fun to be on this pod in the meantime.
And today we have a very special guest. We've had him on before, and it's an honor to have him back on again. We have Joe Frisaro of Man on Second Base. Joe, how are we? How are we doing? I saw you, I believe, on Saturday, and how are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Thanks for having me. And yeah, like the same. I'll be at I just was up in Jupiter quite a bit, but I'll be kind of focused this weekend on the WBC and some other things I'm working on. But in the meantime, it's great to be here and to do this show.
Yep. I'll let Eli take it away.
Yeah, right off the top, we got some news this past weekend about the passing of Cullen McRae. And that's a name that I'm sure fans are probably not very familiar with, but you, Joe, you got to know him very well through the years. He was, for many years, the Marlins video coordinator. He joined the team in 97, and he'd been their video coordinator all the way from 98 through 2012, and then he stuck around all the way to 2015, another position, almost 2 decades around the team. I got to know him a little bit in recent years, even after leaving the team. He just stayed. He was a true Marlins fan even after that point. But since the news came out a couple of days ago, I've been hearing from former players and people that were around Cullen McRae that just had so many positive things to say about who he was and how talented he was and how the kind of vibe that he brought to all his interactions. So if you would be interested in hearing your perspective on what you got to know about C-Mac while he was around.
To say stunned would be an understatement. Yesterday I was home and I got a text from Manny Colon, the former traveling secretary. Manny now works with Oakland, and he texted me to say that Colin had passed, and it just shock, and disbelief. And I went over to, C-Mac and I were, Facebook friends and such. I went over to his page, and it was, everyone eulogizing in him and just stunning. Like you say, I knew I started on the beat in 2002, and C-Mac was part of the daily, just being around the club every day and seeing him, getting to know him, and wrote many stories on him, and always kind of had the angle of the guy who records and logs every at-bat of every player, but never sees the game live, because while the games were being played on the field, Cullen McRae was back videoing, and back when he started, he was using those, he was on the VCR. So he, like, if they were every player, he had their VHS tape, and it just is how far back we've gone in the video technology of the sport. But let's say, Juan Pierre was up to lead off. He would put the Juan Pierre tape in, whatever the outcome was. It'd come out to Luis Castillo and so forth, and he couldn't miss a pitch, all the time. And the pitchers and setting up camera angles. It was always obviously the son of Hal McRae, the brother of Brian McRae. Brian McRae and I worked at MLB.com together. Those real early years, Brian was doing broadcasting. He, of course, played a little bit in the big leagues. Hal McRae, a great player and a manager. Just a tremendous loss, and just very, very saddened by this. And it's been a rough 3 days, because also you caught wind of Dave Wills of Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a radio voice. He passed yesterday. And I'm wearing I'm a longtime Leonard Skinner fan. I'm wearing Leonard Skinner shirt, waking up this morning and finding out that Gary Rossington, the last original member of Leonard Skinner, had passed at age 71. So it's been kind of reminded how fragile life can be and why we need to appreciate. But in honor of Cullen McRae, RIP, my friend, great guy, and did a great job, and just beyond words, stunned and shocked and sad.
Yep. Anything on your end, Isaac? Or
No, I think Joe summarized it great.
yep. So I guess to lighten up the mood a little bit, Joe, I think we're gonna go back to the offseason. We haven't had you on in a while, so we want to get your perspective. What were your thoughts on the Marlins offseason? Obviously, we get the acquisition of Arise, signing of Segura, Cueto, a couple other trades here and there, and we have a very different Marlins defense, but a lineup that looks, on paper looks better offensively.
It was slow and then fast. Like they were very reactive or passive, if that's the right word, because they didn't really do much until like basically mid-January, and then they kind of made their moves. It's really, really hard in the National League East to trade, especially when you are not as talented as the three main teams in front of you, and they are all spending money, and they're bringing in a Trey Turner and so forth. And then you have to part with your second best pitcher to get what you hope now is your best hitter. It's hard to go toe to toe with those type of teams. I think in a vacuum, you could look at trades and say, we like this move or don't like this move. But in terms of making the club dramatically better to be competitive, I think they missed the mark by a pretty wide margin. But they made moves. But I would have liked to have seen, if you thought Jose Abreu was the bat, just make the overpay on Jose Abreu. Don't make the overpay on Johnny Cueto. Or go 2 years at 17 for Gene Segura. Because while these are nice players and nice additions, they're more complementary. I don't think you really dent what the Phillies did with those kind of moves.
Well, I think one of the things that Marlins fans are really worried about is, the center field situation now. Obviously, they have decided to put Jazz Chisholm Jr. out there. You said that they didn't really do enough. What would you have liked to see them do for that position in particular?
Well, it wouldn't have necessarily addressed center, but I wouldn't have minded seeing, Randy Arozarena here. And I think there was a potential of a Pablo Lopez. I didn't totally have it confirmed, but I think you could have possibly, used that chip for Randy Arozarena, which is, to me, a more dynamic middle of the order bat and presence. But, Luis Arraez is a very, very talented hitter who probably will even have his slugging tick up a little bit in Lone Depot, not the home runs per se, but I think he's going to find more doubles and triples in our ballpark, because I think those balls in the gap will be deep enough for him to be able to take second base. But I still think he's more of a table setter than a run producer is what they really need. As for center field, I probably would have had Jazz be my last resort, not my fallback resort. If you wanted Jazz in the outfield, I almost would have rather you put him in left field, to not have the stress of that. And I don't really like moving my all-star second baseman who was finding his niche there and making him in an uncomfortable, Jazz is athletic enough that he could do well, but, to play at the level is a little bit more than 6 weeks of spring training and hitting fungos or whatever type of scenarios happen in 3 or 4 innings he's on the field.
Yeah, I think one of our contributors made a very good point, saying that, he's going to have 6 weeks, but that's going to be at Roger Dean Stadium. When they report to Lone Depot Park, it's a whole new ball game for Jazz.
It's also, Isaac, you have to keep in mind, too, you hear a lot of these players talk about play with that second deck or third deck. Your sight line's different. He's looking at a press box that's not super high off the ground. The balls, it's all day games. Yes, there's a few night games, but for the most part, day games. Getting the reads there and getting used to, seeing the ball come up through that sphere. So I guess the answer would have been, if you had to do with what they have, are they better with De La Cruz in center and Jazz in left to just, okay, he got his bat in the outfield? I don't know. It's really hard. I love Jazz. I want Jazz to succeed. And just because the player told the front office he's willing to do it, yes, it makes for it because I was there when Hanley Ramirez, they signed Jose Reyes, and Hanley Ramirez says, I'm the shortstop. And so from day one, you have an uncomfortable situation where we signed this guy to be $107 million to be the shortstop, thinking you would go to third, but no, I'm really the shortstop. So Hanley transitioning to third never really went smoothly. At least they avoided that, and Jazz being a good teammate and a good soldier to do that. But I want my best young players being in the optimal positions to succeed and excel without being asked to do something that isn't necessarily in their wheelhouse.
And something, that I think we can mention with Jazz in center field is the conditions that he's playing. I mean, we see him make these excuses, true or not. He's going to say it with the ball being a little wet because of the field, and then him trying to deke the run or whatever that is. I think today would have been a nice day to see him play some center field and Tropicana, the domed roof. Maybe not, because that's close as you'll get to replicating Lone Depot Park. I think it would have been nice to see him play today. I know none of the regulars made it out, or almost none of them, but I would have liked to see Jazz play some center field today. I mean, just
you had to make the call. I think the fact that they're all leaving for the WBC, I think obviously, I guess Skip wanted to line up one last time, and they decided to just make it Fort Myers. They could have made. I guess Sandy pitched today, so you could have technically sent everybody up to Tampa, but not to Boston. I don't think one day Kevin's going to really matter that much in that regard, but I do think this. If I'm Skip, and not that they ever ask me anything, I would keep the starting projected as many guys in camp. I think Cooper's always on the field with Rise, I guess, going to WBC and Segura, right? But they're all together. I don't want to. Wherever they go, Garcia, Soler, Jazz, Cooper, Stallings, whoever they think is going to be. I think that unit, especially that they're trying to learn Skip's way, and I don't think you kind of mix and match on road trips and so forth. I would keep as many of the regulars together and play them together to at least get some sort of continuity, especially Jazz in the outfield. I want to know that Garcia is there. I want to know the communication, whoever's in left, whether it's Soler or whomever. I guess, you're going to have to split up somebody at some point. But I would keep my projected as many of the 8 together the rest of spring training.
Yeah, and I do want to ask you, Joe, let's say this doesn't work. Jazz in center doesn't work. What do you think should be that backup plan for the Marlins? Maybe it's too early to be asking this, but from what we have seen so far, it's been a struggle for Jazz, and God knows how much longer this is going to last. Although it does look like it'll last throughout the whole season.
Well, we haven't talked yet that Arise isn't exactly a great second baseman either defensively. So the question then becomes: do you move Arise to first, Jazz back to second, and Cooper to DH, and Soler? I mean, do you go that route? But you do that, especially if they are insisting they won't do that. And if they do that, I probably get more mad at them for completely being wishy-washy and not having the conviction. But I think that would be the most natural way to go.
And I think you mentioned how you'd want to see these guys play together as much as possible. I think up the middle, that's very true. You want to see Joey Wendell, who I guess they're insistent on being their guy at short, with Luis Arise at second, them playing as many games together. How much do you think they're going to really miss Miguel Rojas playing short? Since 2017, they haven't had a good
they're going to miss him immensely. There's no doubt they're going to miss him. And I get it why he was moved. I get it, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. Yeah. But it's like, well, now you're going to see the results. That's now the reality kicks in. Your shortstop is, and not that Joey can't be a competent shortstop, but he's played all of 20 games a max in a year, and he's 31 to 32 years old. So, and then what are you going to do? You're going to put a lot of pressure on Jacob Maya, who's never played in the big leagues, and somehow try to rush his development for defense, which we don't know. I mean, we could say he grades out to be a solid defensive player, but do they start the clock on him or even hurt his development if he has to be used for his long term? I think the toughest thing they've done is they're on record saying they're a playoff contender. So you're kind of, when you do that, you kind of, okay, well, go be a playoff contender now. So I think they kind of boxed themselves into some very difficult spots.
And when your strength is pitching, I think it's very tough to be so, it's okay to sacrifice some defense, but when you're sacrificing defense all over the infield and in the outfield, it's going to make for a pretty tough situation, no?
Of course. That's I mean, the way this team is structured, the pitching can't take any setbacks.
Exactly.
Everyone's got to be much better. And including Sandy, who had a career year. I mean, if Sandy's ERA goes to 3.1 and he pitches just 200 innings, it's still a very good year. But it's like, their margin for error is so thin right now, and that's even taking away injuries, which always happen. I guess the best news, guys. I don't know if this is out. Usually Eli is all on top of it, which I heard. I guess the one I think a positive I heard is that Edward Cabrera indeed has an option. I don't know if you guys have heard that, but
I had not heard that.
Yeah, and if you go now and look at Fangraphs, they're up to date on that. I had heard that he and Sixto, and I wasn't sure if Sixto was completely out or whatnot, but they have options, both of them, and that is huge because now you have some flexibility if Cabrera, for whatever reason, is either struggling or not built up right, because the worry with Edward is never the stuff, it's the health. But that's good news. So I like that.
I knew about Sixto going back a while now, but with Edward, that is that makes a big difference because this was we just touched on this last week on our show about Edward and his place on the team, and like so much of that was based around the premise that he was out of options, and this certainly changes the equation. Even though there was a lot of positive from Edward last year, there's underlying concerns. I mean, there were times where his control got away from him, and the durability continues to be the biggest thing. Where if it's a player that, if all goes well with Edward, is he really going to make 32 starts this year? Probably not, because based on his history,
it's very tough because it's not fair to him, because that's what you're asking now. You're asking for, okay, let's say Sandy's Sandy, and we're not worried about Sandy. He's going to be fine, right? Lazard, let's even get benefit of doubt. He'll have consistent enough mechanics and stay healthy and be at least 25 to 30 starts. We'll give you that. There are signs pointing that Trevor Rogers, it could have he's a good bounce back candidate. Okay, those three guys, you can win a good number of games on paper with three decent guys, three guys like that, assuming they're all fine. Well, Cueto is a year older. It's not that you lost Pablo's 150 innings, wherever he threw, and got Cueto's 150, so they just interchange. The quality of stuff of the two is night and day. It's not even debatable. It's like you basically got an outlier type year from Cueto, who, to his credit, he did it and got $8 million for it, and great for him. But ideally, that's your depth fifth starter, not your veteran. Has to be a 2, maybe a 3, and then that allows you room with Garrett and whoever else might factor into the equation.
What do you do a 6-man, Joe? 6-man rotation?
They never work. Everyone talks it, and then it usually gets screwy because then somebody in the bullpen is awkward. You could do it, and let's say you do keep Sandy on 5 days, and everyone else is going sometimes 7 days. You're not really going to get that continuity. It's I like the theory of the 6-man rotation, and it can work more realistically with the 26-man roster where you for sure have 13 pitchers, that you could figure it out if you got those. I always like the Castano types, the guy who can start and give you 3 innings out of the pen, give you those type of guys. But you really have to think it out. You have to think it out. And that's more than just a quick, oh my God, this might work type of thing. I rather let, somebody like Eury, and that's just assuming Eury is ready, and he certainly wouldn't be up before the All-Star break, in my opinion. Just get him down to minors, get his work in, let him develop, instead of somehow he's part of a 6-man rotation and we're babying his innings. And because I think we just saw what Philly is doing with Painter. Andrew Painter, they're fine, 19-year-old as well. Once you start putting in their head they could be in the big leagues right away, things change. You kind of those are way too valuable commodities to mess around with. I get it. Philly, they went to the World Series. They're 2 wins shy of winning it all. If Painter helps them from day one, but a team like the Marlins, I think they realistically, if they catch lightning in a bottle and get hot when the season starts, so be it. But you can't rush Eury Pérez, under any circumstance. Because every scout I talked to, and we saw him pitch the other day, and he's fine. He's doing fine. But he's looking like a 19-year-old gaining experience. He still needs to work on fastball command. His secondary pitches had flash plus changeup. His slider was a little sloppy the other day, but it shows enough to be plus slider. We can't sit around and say we're ready to take on the Mets and Braves right now and Eury's our guy. It's not as polished as when a 19-year-old, 20-year-old Jose Fernandez, who was ready to be in the big leagues.
Yeah, that's exactly what Christina told me the other day, actually. And assuming that, I do see here that Edward Cabrera does have one option. Assuming that they do go with a 5-man rotation, how would you build that team? Would you have Braxton in AAA if he were the 6th guy, or do you have?
He could win the job. He could win it. Yeah, I have no problem with him winning the job. Yeah, if he's throwing well, I haven't seen him yet, but if he's throwing well, then he could be in that. I have no problem with that. He's ready. He's ready. Oh, I know you're going with 3 lefties. Yeah, I get that, but I think if I'm the Marlins, I'm going with my best 5.
You have to.
You need a fast start. You need a fast start.
Not only that, especially with the defense you have behind you, you kind of want. I guess you would have your inning eater and Johnny Cueto, and then the 3 other guys are more strikeout-oriented guys.
You hope he's your inning eater.
You hope, yeah, exactly. I mean, he has not looked good so far, but that's spring training. So, and then I like what you said with Pablo and Cueto. You do notice the difference because Pablo, very strikeout-oriented. He does get the ground ball, but Cueto, I mean, we saw Cueto put up his lowest K per 9 of his career this past year and very, very high ground ball rates. So you kind of hope that Cueto can kind of translate that to Lone Depot Park, which is a lot. I believe it's more pitcher friendly than Guaranteed Field. Yeah,
everywhere.
So you kind of hope that translates. So, Joe, we've kind of seen a couple weeks of spring training so far. The Marlins are 1-8-1. Unlike other years, this team's losing in spring training. We usually see them getting a good amount of wins. What have been your initial assessments so far on the Marlins spring training, aside from wins and losses, just guys on the field?
I mean, sadly, they're kind of what I thought they were going to be. They're going to struggle defensively. They're not a complete team. It's kind of hard to not stumble into a couple of more wins just based on how spring training works. But it just shows that, defense matters. It really does. And okay, if we're going to just look at, what they're building, what they're doing, Skip's going to work a lot on base running. That's kind of an opportunity for them to kind of make a difference if they could, take advantage of extra bases and run the bases well. I think that speaks for a lot of teams. There are a lot of base running has kind of become a lost art in recent years. And I think that a team that kind of can do it well, you're going to have to do it with Jazz. You're going to have to do it with Wendell. Guys like that are going to have to be kind of your catalyst to get, able to take, steal a run, steal a base and such. So I think that's encouraging. To be honest, I'm kind of happy by this, that Terry Collins and Dave Wallace are part of the organization. And from what I understand, Jim Riggleman is also, I don't know if that's out there yet, but Jim Riggleman is going to be kind of one of those roving advisor types. I don't think he's started yet, but might be telling you news. But I like that these are really good baseball people. And I like that they're baseball people. I like that Jeff Conine's back. Yeah. I think that's really important. And I just would like to see some really seasoned-eyed baseball people, evaluator types, who could kind of paint a more accurate picture for them. So when they're moving forward, they're not making moves that might be detrimental in the long term.
Yeah, and that's something that's very interesting because we saw when Jeter and Sherman came in, they basically got rid of a lot of those baseball guys. Dawson and Conine and McKeon, I believe, was the other one.
Yeah, Jack, Tony Pérez,
Tony Pérez, and they're bringing these guys back. Now we see Terry Collins. Dave Wallace, all these Jeff Conine, who I mean Jeff and Juan Pierre have been great too. Those guys helping out the outfielders. I mean, maybe you guys know this. Does Juan Pierre have an official title with the Marlins, or is he just there?
I don't think it's official, other than there's kind of like, you need me today, I could get up there and help the outfielders to do whatever. I don't think he has an official title, but it would be sort of a kind of whatever instructor or whatever, just great guy, professional example to, if he could help Jazz and help John Jay in any way he can, that's what Juan Pierre needs to be.
Yeah, Kevin did mentioned Andre Dawson. I just want to shout out Joe's recent interview. He had Andre Dawson on his pod on the Real Voices of the Game. I just want to say I enjoyed that conversation.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, that's fun. It's always good to reconnect with Hawk. That guy is unbelievable. And I love to see those guys back. And I think the organization now seems much more receptive to bring in. I mean, it's just to me ridiculous that you let 2 Hall of Famers go, and then Jack McKeon, who's in my opinion it should be a Hall of Famer, and because of nothing else, what we're seeing these legendary figures, ambassadors. You have over 70 years in the sport, and you're World Series champ, a 2-time manager of the year. A guy who's been a GM and took a team to the World Series. He managed a team to the World Series. Jack has done it all. Kind of popularized winter meetings and trades, and just not to have them around I think it's a loss. And I think the fans identify with them as well. These people on those backfields are always fun to see.
Now, speaking of managers, for those following or for those watching on YouTube, we have a picture of Skip Schumaker. Joe, you've covered your fair share of managers, in your career for MLB.com.
Yeah, way too many at the Marlins level.
Yeah, right. Don Mattingly was the longest tenured Marlins manager in his history. I just wanted to get your thoughts, your takeaways from Skip, and how he sort of, is different from Skipper Don Mattingly.
Yeah, I mean, he the science point, he checks a lot of boxes. He knows analytics. He's good with players. He's younger. He's going to work well with Kim. They're on the same page, which is always important. But you win with players, and you win with high impact players. So I think, he's going to, he's going to have to instill a culture. I think that he's going to have to deal with patience, and that doesn't mean that they can't, with their pitching, if everything catches, that they can't be better than, I think. But if they get off to a slow start, keep in mind Joe Girardi at one point, Joe Girardi came in highly acclaimed and, very self-assured, and, he was like 10-20 or 10-30 at one point. They were like 20 games under. Yeah. And they got over 500. So, you could, you're going to have to deal with some adversity. I think what hurts Skip is the WBC being this year is terrible for Skip Schumaker, to be with that one player, let alone 5 or 6. Because like I said earlier, these guys need to get to know each other. They need to know his personality. They need to know where he stands on stuff, and he's learning too. And so he's not a miracle worker, and he's says the right things, he's doing the right things, and he's accessible with the media and all signs. But again, you win with players, and he's got to find out who he can win with.
Yeah, and something that's interesting about Skip is he can relate to a lot of these guys. I think we've said this many times on here, and we've heard many others say it. He was in that final year of the StatCast era. He's younger. I mean, you relate to the guys. He was a player himself. He was on World Series winning teams. He was even teammates with a couple of these players. Now he's with John Jay as his coach. John Jay is under him as the manager now. So it's a good dynamic to have Skip out there.
Yeah,
John. Yeah. So it's a good dynamic to have out there with Skip and a younger staff. I would say a lot of these guys are younger, and now we have Brant Brown, who a lot of players really do love. From what I've heard from players themselves and what we've been seeing from the outside, a lot of these guys love Brant Brown, who was the former Dodgers, I believe, assistant hitting coach. He wasn't the official guy at one point, but I mean, you gotta love what they're doing. And you said it, Joe. I mean, if the team needs to perform. It's all about the players. As much as we could praise Skip Schumaker and talk really good about him and many of these other players, it comes down to the players themselves to really get the win.
This is what unfortunately, and the fact that we haven't had winning down here in forever. Yes, 2020 it is what it is. But you find out, and you guys see it in your coverage, you start embracing a few storylines in the context of a season. And I think so many don't recognize, you don't even know what a really good looking team looks like, because you'll sit around and you might have, hey, Sandy's a Cy Young winner. He's my story this year. I had that, D. Gordon winning the batting title on a bad team, Stanton an MVP on a bad team. You have those moments, but so Brent Brown could have a hitter just really overperform or really come to light and get a lot of praise from a player or two, but it's not necessarily in the context of the lines moving. Like, the Cardinals going in knowing they've got a really, really, really good chance of winning a division and a really, really better chance of being one of 6 teams in the playoffs. So when I'm watching them on TV a little earlier and they're roughing up Hunter Brown, I think his name, the pitcher with the Astros, a good pitcher, young pitching prospect. But you're seeing like Dylan Carlson came to life today, and Jack Flaherty's looking like he's showing sign. They're dealing in a whole different world. The Cardinal way is they're going to playoffs. There's a team concept. It's a team thought. It's not, hey, who's going to be our all-star this year? Or who's our Cy Young guy? Or, it's we get wrapped up in 5 players or maybe 8, but it's a different type of way of evaluating even your coaching staff, because you're going to see certain players are going to come and be bad. Like I said, I always say this, with pitching, someone surprises, someone disappoints. That always is the case. And then the same thing, you're going to have some hitters going to do a little bit better or a little bit worse than we all thought. But with the Marlins, it's like, where's the next wave of hitters? Bleday's gone. He was supposed to be. And, why I wasn't the biggest fan of that signing, that pick or whatever. You also could say maybe they quit a little early on him. But he's gone. So now Burdick has had some good at bats, but guys come in, they're excited. They want to make a good impression early on. The last 2 weeks of spring training are a different ballgame. Usually that's those final 10 days to 2 weeks. That's when you're starting to see. So if there's a silver line for the Marlins, if they want to lose every game now before the last 2 weeks and then play plus 500 of the last 2 weeks, that's a better sign than winning now. And, and why I say that is, the pitchers are locking it. Right now, the pitchers are figuring out the pitch clock. Yeah. And they're building up arm strength. They're trying to get through 4 innings. They don't care what. They may just go a whole start not throwing any breaking balls or whatever they want to work on. They may only work on hitting the outside part of the plate. They're not thinking of, how am I getting this guy out? They're not game planning. But that final 2 weeks, now the pitcher's like, how am I going to get him out? Not necessarily a game plan for that, like they're putting the game plan for that night, but maybe my change just my out pitch. I'm going to start using my changeup to get out. That type of mentality. So that's what, when you're dealing with these young hitters, what whether it's Brown or whoever in the system is working with hitters, you got to start building. You got to, somehow you got to get Jesus Sanchez to tap in, because he's got a lot of raw talent. He's got a long swing, but he's got a lot of raw talent, and he's one of the few guys that could change a game with one swing. How is he doing? How's he? Like, I think I saw someone tweet out, like, I guess today, Alcantara leaves and whoever, Josh Simpson, I guess, came in and gave a bomb or something like that. And it's like, oh, poor Sandy. No, I don't care if Sandy Alcantara has an L on a spring training game, means nothing. I want to see Josh Simpson, because you want to know. You want to know, is Josh Simpson an answer for you? So I'm looking more at what's Josh Simpson doing rather than Sandy, other than Sandy Vila where it's supposed to be. He's okay. Okay, good job. Go away. I didn't need Sandy to strike out 6 or 8 to say Sandy's doing well. You don't need that. But you need Josh Simpson to show what he can do. And from all indications, okay, he gave up a bomb, but I guess he pitched pretty well.
Struck out the side enough.
Yeah, but we have 4 Ks or something like that. So it's like, so I'd rather see him get the work. Those are the type of things I look in spring games. I'm not just looking to go across the board and see if Jazz homer today, because you expect Jazz is going to hit his share of homers,
And not only and you mentioned the pitch clock. Not only the pitchers have to adjust, but the hitters as well. I mean, we've seen those violations already this year from the hitters' end. So I mean, those guys have to adjust.
Altuve tonight. Altuve started an at bat 0-1, and he's like, "What did I do?" And then the umpire's like explaining. He's like getting ready, and he strikes out, and he's having a 5-minute conversation. He just stepped in the batter's box, and he's like, "What did I do?"
And the good thing is the Marlins haven't had too many issues with it so far. I know the first game they had their fair share of issues, but I don't think they've really had much more after that. I think DLC had one a couple days ago, something like that. But anything else you want to touch up on, Isaac, before we go WBC?
Yeah, no, Joe, you mentioned Simpson as someone. Those are the types of guys you want to see. You want to see the Burdicks. You want to see the Groshans guys, because this is what spring training is all about. You got to see what these guys can be. A couple of years ago, it was Blade and Meisner and guys like that. Which guys like those this spring have sort of impressed you, or maybe not so much so far?
Well, everyone wants to see Eury. I mean, let's just address him because I want Eury to make a tough call for them, and I don't think and that's no knock on him if he doesn't. But I like that. I always go back to when Yelich, and I used to have like a running joke with in 2013 because remember they got really young and they traded everybody away and everyone hated them. And then Yelich like literally wouldn't get himself cut. Yeah. Like literally they're ready to send him down. He's hitting walk-offs against Boston. And I walk, we're walking under the bleachers there, and I see Dan Jennings. I'm like, kid doesn't want to get cut. He doesn't want to get cut today. And we would laugh about that. Like Yelich was he was the ultimate example of a guy you knew was going down, but didn't want to get cut. And every day would get 4 hits if he was in the lineup, walk-off homers. He was doing that. That's what I'm looking for from guys.
Like Jordan Walker.
Yeah, Jordan Walker. Yeah, cut me. You have to cut me. I'm not going to cut myself. Now, Jordan Walker also, it's early in spring. They're not looking to get him out yet. So, he'll get the book on him is going to be, and I love Jordan Walker, but it's like, and I hope he does that. I love, those are the stories I like. I like when the player knocking on the door makes the team. So if we were looking, the guy closest to knocking on the door is Eury, right? In terms of impactful guy. Yep. And so is Eury going to knock their socks off? And if he doesn't, that's fine. It's fine. He doesn't need to be Sandy right now. Just let him get better.
Especially since he's 19. I mean, you said it. You have to gain that experience, and he's looked really good at some moments. That first game he came in looked pretty good. On Saturday, first 2 innings looked good, topped at a 99, I believe. I don't think he ever hit 100, but he looked really good. And I know he had this command issues, give up the 2 homers, but I mean, you're facing major league talent and you're doing what you're doing at this point. I mean, it's going to be a hard cut at some point because especially with the WBC, now you lose Sandy and Cueto, you're going to have to need those guys a little bit more.
It's good for him because he probably will get a few more innings. Yeah. So that is good. So maybe he does that, but I'm just saying right now in terms of crispness of stuff, not just the result, not just hitting 99, putting the ball where he wants it, executing pitches. Remember the first game, I guess he was basically fastball slider because he was trying to get rid of the ball at 8 seconds. It was just the clock was so in everybody's head. That first game was like, what are we supposed to do? Let's end the game. They want fast games. So next thing you know, you're a young pitcher, and even Stallings noted he was like, I hadn't caught him before, so I was just kind of letting him feel comfortable. And even like Segura had to say, you got to break the pattern. They're on you because you're just fastball slider, whatever that combo was where, okay, the next pitch is this, that he got predictable. And that's a whole different ball game with 20 seconds and 15 seconds for pitchers. I don't, Verlander's just messing with people. It's funny to see the other extreme, the 40-year-olds, Verlander, they want to see what they can get away with. Can I throw it 1 second? They're just messing with you. And the Marlins pitchers are like, the clock's running. We got to throw the ball. But they're young. They don't have that experience or that craftiness to know I can get rid of the ball whenever I want. I could stand there for 8 seconds and have the hitter he can't call time because he already did call time. Yeah. There are all sorts of little tricks that these veterans are going to exploit, and the Marlins young pitchers just need to learn it.
Yeah, there was a great video of Max Scherzer doing exactly that, holding the ball until 1 second on the clock, and these hitters, they've got no chance against.
He already caused a league email, Scherzer, that quick pitch is illegal. You can't quick pitch, and so the Verlander's completely like pushing the envelope with the rule, and I think we saw the other day with Verlander what he kept throwing over. He was testing the throw over rule.
Yeah,
like it was almost like he intentionally threw over twice for a rise. To say, okay, well, what am I going to do now? I can't throw over anymore. Is he going to run? How am I going to deal with this? That's what those guys are Hall of Famers. Those guys are completely playing chess while everyone else is, playing, what piece moves on the checkerboard.
And I guess that's something we weren't able to get your take on last year. Obviously, your thoughts on the ban of the shift, the larger bases, and the clock.
They're going to be better. In theory, I don't like it. I don't like to mandate that, but the clock would the same effect be if it was 25 seconds and 20 instead of 20 and 15? Verlander had a great quote the other day. He was like, I don't want to throw any pitch because I'm trying to beat the clock. Every pitch I want to throw with conviction. And if it comes to that, where pitchers are just throwing the ball, it's almost like throwing a half-court shot to beat the first half in basketball. You want to. That's how injuries are going to happen. That's how sloppy play is going to happen. And games are going to be decided on it. And that's the other thing too. It doesn't help the Marlins that is Puck thrown yet. No. He's been banged up, right?
Yeah. He's throwing live BP on Thursday. Both of them.
Yeah, they've thrown. You got to assume it's with some sort of.
But they're going to have to. These are your and Floro's velo's down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's every year. It looks like Floro.
But he also has had injury issues. But those are your three of your high leverage guys who you want, who are going to come into the game with a clock in their head, a guy on base, and not a lot of work in spring to kind of work through it. Those are things I'm looking at. In the grand picture of how are they going to do their job at their highest level.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, Joe, because go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was speaking about it with Christina. It was because in the late inning, I think 20 seconds is okay. It's fine, but you really can't look down on your phone while watching a baseball game anymore. But in the later innings, 7th, 8th, 9th inning of a postseason game, for example, I would have liked to see the clock go to like maybe 30 seconds, 35 seconds, because that's how the whole emotion of the baseball game, at least as a fan, I thought that was a swell idea.
I think that baseball right now has been so adamant. I mean, look, they were calling automatic strikes on Altuve, automatic strikes on Miguel Cabrera. They're going to the most popular players. They're telling Verlander, no, you can't quick pitch. You have to throw. Didn't Verlander Scherzer, I think, said couldn't have a little leeway. He's baiting them. He's trying to, it's like the league has now forced itself that no, rules are rules are rules are rules. But we saw it with the exchange rule a few years ago. You might remember that, where if you drop the ball in the exchange, the Marlins actually won a game against the Mets, I believe, on a play like that. There was a throw to third base, and it was a David Wright or whoever was playing third that day, got the ball and tried to get rid of it, and the ball fell, and he was clearly out at third, but by the definition of the rule, he was safe. That runner scored. The Marlins won by a run. They overturned that rule like a month into the season. So while baseball is very adamant about this, if it becomes problematic with that, just striving to make it hurry up, where the quality of play or somebody blows out a great young arm or something because he slips or something on the, hurrying, maybe they amend a couple of seconds, but then you'd have to adjust to a new couple of seconds. But I'm just saying whatever would be a more comfortable time, especially in the high leverage innings, that's where I think more so than the early innings that I think that would be a factor.
Yeah. And the good thing is that a lot of this, I think every starter hasn't had an issue with it so far. Sandy works fairly fast. Luzardo told us on Saturday he doesn't really matter. The pitch clock isn't a big issue for him. He works fairly fast with it too.
Although he did admit that he was trying to tinker with it. Remember, he was trying to be a little cute with it and may have rushed a pitch or two. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So, Joe, I want to ask you this. I mean, I think all positions at this point are filled out, but there's one I kind of want to get into a little bit, and that's left field. I mean,
You have De La Cruz, you have Sanchez, Jorge Soler, and Burdick. What are your thoughts on that position? And De La Cruz and Burdick have probably had some of maybe the best springs so far. I think Burdick is taking some great at-bats. Exit velos are very high. I mean, he's just getting that ball in play, and De La Cruz as well. I mean, those guys are looking good. Sanchez has had his good moments. And then Soler, I think we'll mostly see a DH, but they haven't ruled out that he'll play some left field.
Don't you want Burdick to play every day? So I'm not, he has to win the job, right? He has to win the job. So if not, he goes to AAA and plays every day. So he has to go and play.
Yeah.
Sanchez out of options. I don't think they gave him one.
Yeah.
He's out of options, so I'm not convinced he's going to be on the team. They may have to package him in a trade. De La Cruz is when he's hot, he's super fun. Everyone loves him. And then he goes 0 for 2 months. And it's a little hard to live that way. John Birdie. Let's put John Birdie in center or something. Don't we want John Birdie to play more? It's like
just probably.
Why can't John Birdie be the left fielder? It'd probably be a more interesting team offensively.
Yeah,
probably.
I would agree. And speaking of left field, because I believe that's where I think Jordan Walker, if he is going to make the team, which I don't think he will, but I think they'd like to see him at left because there's just no room for him, obviously, in the left side of that infield. The question that I put out on Twitter, it gained a little bit of traction. It was a popular tweet. There's a question: would Marlins fans trade Eury Pérez for Jordan Walker 1-for-1? Joe, would you make that trade?
Yeah, he's a better prospect. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Eury's probably a 3. Which is fine.
Exactly what I said.
Wow, you and Isaac are just
exactly what I said.
For a $200,000 signing, the DR, I mean, that's, if he emerges as a 2, great, But yeah, probably Jordan Walker is ridiculous. That's we've seen it. We've already seen it. Guys with effortless power and feel for the game. Those are your impactful guys. And don't you want a what do they say? No.
Yeah, 61% of Marlins fans said they'd rather have Eury.
Who's informing this market? Eli, come on.
I voted absolutely. I'm totally on board with you, Joe, on this one as well. That even if all things are equal, then you go with the hitter. The hitter,
exactly.
Especially these days with how carefully pitcher innings are being managed. Like the position player has so many more opportunities to impact your team.
Exactly.
Over the course of the season.
I like the Larry Beinfest philosophy. You always try to acquire pitching in whatever trade you make, even no matter what you did, even if you got some sort of arm in there. But 1-for-1, that's what made the Jazz Gallen trade so fascinating, because both teams are happy with that trade. Yet I don't like that trade on the surface. I would have liked to, it's like it usually doesn't. First of all, it usually doesn't work out for both. And secondly, I agree. Yes, you want the everyday player. But you also have 6 years of control of a kind of a 2 3 type of guy. A guy who last year, in my opinion, was a top 5 Cy Young Award candidate in Gallen. So you don't. I prefer. Yes, it's a fun trade to do that, but normally for me, that's a huge. Like if you got Walker and Pérez in a trade, then you got Dylan Carlson in a trade. You got you got some other pieces going there.
Yeah.
You get an arm coming back from St. Louis. It's not going to be of Eury's caliber, but maybe he's a 5, to give you more pitching. That's where, it's fun. These are like, fantasy trades, but, a real baseball trade would be fun to do that. But those are part of a package. Let's say that's a 6-player trade.
Right. So I was so for this trade that I would have even thrown in more on Miami's side, including Eury for Jordan Walker, because that's just a blue chip position player prospect that Miami has not had since Yelich. I don't know if you disagree.
Yeah, Yelich or JT, but JT being a catcher, well, they're the same year, 13. That's why I wasn't crazy about the Bleday trade for Puck. It's on the surface. Okay, you could look at it. 2 high first rounders who neither one has totally, made their mark yet. AJ throws, 100, great, but he's got a lot of injury history. I'm moving Bleday as part of a package, maybe Bleday and Pablo, and go get a huge trade. You bring more back from Minnesota, send him to Tampa. And you get a Rosarena, and have to look at maybe. You know what I mean. You just make you package those guys. You don't just one for one those guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it was. Unless you package him with Pablo, I really happen to actually love the Blade trade, just because I think you were maybe 1 or 2 more months of Blade putting up pedestrian numbers in the high minors, where he's gonna have no value whatsoever anymore. So I think
but then you're okay. But what if he has 2 good months?
He has not put together a single good season in his.
No, I know that, but it's just in general. It's like you basically for the 4th pick in the draft.
Yeah,
said it was like the 4th pick in the draft. You're like, he has no value, and we have no confidence, and we're just gonna get whatever we can for him. It's not really a great way to handle that situation.
Right.
I think the trade ended better for Miami because you get a reliever which can get in as the closer.
But he's not pitched yet.
I mean, but
he helps you right now. He helps you right now. He helps your big league team. Blade was not going to play on this big league team. He's totally blocked everywhere.
That's probably the most fascinating thing is they didn't even give him a chance. Like they were that sold that he couldn't be.
Which it was like his launch angle, right?
Rightfully so. I saw nothing from him that would demonstrate to me that he'd be able to hit big league pitching. I think he's too fast.
I'm not necessarily disagreeing.
Even in the minor leagues, it was.
Just take Riley Green. What was the matter with him?
Take CJ Abrams. Take Riley Green. Take Hunter Bishop instead.
Riley Green has had some nice moments already this spring. It's looking very exciting.
Well, okay, let's because I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking because I was the one guy saying to do it back then. But just coming out of high school, not one highly respected evaluator had an issue with Riley Green. Quite the swing. On quite the opposite. Swing was picture perfect. CJ Abrams, no one had a question about his swing. JJ Bleday has a hitch in his swing. That was, and he was 4 years older.
Yeah,
it was like right there. It's like that. Yet, I don't know. He went 5 for 5 against Auburn in the SEC playoffs.
Yeah, SEC tournament. Hey, when you have Jorge Posada and Derek Jeter and Gary Denbo and Michael Hill all in attendance for that 5 for 5 game, I guess that was enough to persuade them to take JJ Bleday. And I think they did something not similar because there's no really high school guys after, but there were, but not to the same caliber as Green. They went with Jacob Berry, 6th overall. I personally thought they were to go with someone like Brooks Lee, maybe that catcher Parada on the Mets. What were your thoughts on? I know I asked you this in person the other day. Your thoughts on this draft, and then I think.
I had no problems with the Berry because there's someone I really trusted likes Berry. Saw him and likes him, so I was giving the benefit of the doubt there. I didn't have a ton. I couldn't get similar intel from Brooks Lee other than what the usual suspects were writing about him and saying about him. There's clearly some issues to be at least mildly concerned about with Berry's swing. There. Unless Lee really makes it, I don't know. Like the high school kids were the draft last year. That was, what I mean. You weren't going to get Jackson Holiday. You weren't going to get Drew Jones, and Elijah Green was slipping, but he didn't slip that far. And I don't think they would.
I was hoping Tamar Johnson.
I don't think they would have taken him. Tamar Johnson. Tamar Johnson. Excuse me. These are, really exciting prep players. And when the Rangers jump in with Kumar Rocker right away and push that line down, what if Green was there? Would they have taken him? I don't know. I'm not sure they would have.
They probably would
have. I don't think they would have taken
him. No, they wouldn't have. But it would have been great. You would have had your center fielder for the future.
I mean, the K rate's ridiculous, but the potential there. But the tools itself, like I was telling people, I think Elijah Green's the guy that could get a lot of GMs and draft, directors fired, because you miss on that, then you're fired. But if you were right and the red flags were too great, then But the tool package is just ridiculous.
How much have you looked at this upcoming draft, Joe?
I haven't really dug in yet. Now I'm doing some of these high schools. So it's the fun thing. I've seen the guys down here. and it's kind of fun doing with SB Live, doing these high school games and then going and seeing. But I've seen Stoneman Douglas 3 times, and Christian Rodriguez, a pitcher who's going to go to Florida. He's an exciting player, but he might be a top 3 round guy as well. And that guy's got a lot of fire. I like him a lot. Adrian Santana at Doral Academy is going to UM. Scouts or wherever he is, they are. He's in a high demand. We got players down here. So Wednesday I'm going to try to see George Lombard from Gulliver. That's one reason I'm not going up to Jupiter. I have to see some of these guys to get a real feel. But we got some good players here. We don't have. It's not like 18 with Casas, and it's pretty good draft.
And I know you're so salty about that one, Joe. That 2018.
Oh
draft.
My goodness! Are you kidding me?
That was the beginning of the end. Shane McClanahan, Bo Naylor. Who else was in that one? That was a lot. Tristan Casas was right there for you.
Wasn't Alec Manoah and Logan Gilbert in that one?
Logan Gilbert as well. That might go down as one of the greatest first round or first.
That was a really good.
That 18 draft is ridiculous. Yeah. Adley Rushman.
Yeah, so many other teams made the same mistake after the Marlins because Casas
didn't. Or it was Rushman by 19. I might have to double check on that.
Casas was 18.
Casas was in the class of 18. 18 draft was really good.
Rushman was 19. Yeah.
19. Yeah. With Witt. Witt's going to be a superstar as well.
Oh yeah,
that's
going to be
special.
Any teams in the NL East? Not, I guess, just to shift more baseball in general. Any teams in the NL that you think are going to be pretty good that weren't last year, like the Cubs, Diamondbacks, those type of teams?
Well, Diamondbacks, if they're pitching, their bullpen's going to be real spotty, but they have a chance.
Yeah, that's a fun team, though.
They got speed, they got athletes, they got some good young pitching. Giants, Rockies aren't there yet. The Central,
the Cubs could make the Cubs.
The Cubs are. I don't like building that way. With all free agents, it's like yes, they have some. It's like usually not the best formula. Yeah. I don't know why the people don't like the Phillies more. It's almost like the Phillies are really good. They're really good. Yeah, Dombrowski does such a great job.
They're trying to copy a piece of them. The Marlins are kind of trying to copy some of what they did with the bad defense and amazing offense, huh?
Yeah, but it's like
it's not the same.
They improved their defense. They went and got Brandon Marsh to play center. And then they, got Stott up. And when they got Stott up and moved him to short, now you got Turner. So so they're strong up the middle. Yeah, I know we know that Castellanos and Schwarber are bat first by a large margin, but it's not as plotting. And Baum got a lot better. He was dreadful for a while. But they got a nice team going there. They got a nice team. What do you think of the Mets? We've seen the Mets a few times. They look really powerful.
Oh yeah.
I think they're going to be good. Man. They always get better, but at the end of they just, I don't know, man. The Braves sometimes just like
we haven't seen Atlanta, so are they going to miss Swanson? That's a big loss.
That is a big loss, and we have to see what they do at shortstop. But I think Grisham could be pretty good there.
Yeah, I just don't know if he's an everyday shortstop. That's really, really hard to be. They're really rolling their dice on it, though. It's really rolling the dice on it. But again, from a Marlins standpoint, how are you going to punch with these guys? I just don't see it. It's like, and it's why I kind of wish they would have a longer lens and say, Kim's on her last year, right? So why don't you just say, hey, look, we're going to extend Kim. If we catch lightning in a bottle this year, so be it. But we're not going to do anything hasty or stupid and try to be more than we are. I know we've asked the market for patience before, but let's build it more right than, kind of go all in with. Because right now your farm system's not what it was 2 years ago.
Not even close.
Outside of Eury, you're really thin right now. And yes, Dax, but you're asking a lot from him as well. And then you're, like you say, you got your big league depth is not what it was.
Yeah. Well, you touched on it perfectly right there about Kim and her status, where it's kind of on ownership to lead that longer term vision. If Kim is on the last year of her deal and she doesn't have full assurance that she has like years to work with, then it's hard to blame her for wanting to accelerate it.
No, there's no doubt. But it's like, what is it? Win more games is the goal. I mean, are we going to be happy if you had me on in October and like, hey guys, we won 76 games and we're only 10 out? Are we just be like doing cartwheels? Like, this is wonderful. Like, wow, we're the best 76 win team in baseball. It's like, what is it? Is it anything better than 69 wins? Where's the bar? What is a happy year? Oh, well, we won 76, but we lost X number of 1-run games. So we really were 82 and 80. So everyone gets an extension. It's like, what? I don't know.
Our good friend David Sampson says the worst place to be is in the middle. You're winning.
And he's right.
He's right.
Of course he is.
He's right, because it's hard to make that up.
Yeah.
It'd be different if they're there with everything knocking on the door. It's like you need the Hail Mary pass. Like the Diamondbacks, if they got to 80 wins or 78, 80 wins, they got young, controllable guys. Corbin Carroll, and they probably will sign at some point, and get these guys that are okay. Now we're making this, and then next year, and the next year, we're in the conversation. That's is our window. Yeah. Where's the window? The window seems like now or never. The window is Sandy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When they signed Sandy to that contract, you basically tried to open your championship, not championship, but playoff window or improvement window, I would say, because I don't think this team is even close to a World Series. Joe, before we close it out, what are your 2023 expectations for the Marlins?
About what the 2022. I think the team looks very similar, so I think it's going to be that kind of year. So we'll see. We'll see.
All right, and I think that we could close it out here. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you on, and we'll have you on soon for sure. Isaac, anything? Eli, anything? Or we're good to go?
No, just thank you very much, Joe. It's great to see you as always. I'm sure I'll see you again in Jupiter before spring's end, and I'll see you at Lone Depot Park in the press box.
Oh, absolutely. Eli, have a safe trip down to Florida, and hope to see you at the Classic as well.
Yes, I'll be there all day on Sunday in particular. And I know Joe already mentioned before we started recording that you're going to be there allowed the tournament as well. So
I'll be out there, doing that, some stuff for the Palm Beach Post and whoever else I could do stuff for. So thanks for having me, guys, and
So from Isaac, from Eli, from Joe, and myself, we see you guys on the next one. Peace out and go fish.
We got to end it off right.